Good afternoon, you guys. It's great to be here to share with you some of the information that we have on mulching options for the garden. So I think we've all been here. We've all experienced some hair pulling times when weeds have overtaken our vegetable or flower gardens. So controlling weeds is a lot of work and it can take a lot of time. So it's completely understandable why this happens. And today I'm going to share with you some ways in which we can help to prevent problems like this. So first off, what is a weed? Everybody seems to have their own definition of what a weed is. So I have a master's in crop science, and in my weed science class in undergrad, I quickly learned that a lot of the plants that we grow in our landscaping are considered weeds in agricultural fields. So one of my favorite definitions of what is a weed is a plant out of place. Uh, a plant, the beauty of a plant is in the eye of the beholder. So everybody can find beauty in different plants and they can be beautiful dependent on the environment that they're growing in. One that I find comical in landscaping is morning glory. So in the picture on your screen, in the left, we see morning glory growing up a, a porch railing. And it looks beautiful. It's where it should be. It's in the landscape and it looks good. But to the right, we see a cornfield and we see morning glory growing up the corn plants. And this environment, the weeds can damage corn yield or crop yield. And then also I see the damage that this can do to a combine, as often morning glory can clog up a combine. So the definition of a weed is kind of based off of your own personal definition and how you feel about different plants. So ultimately, how can we control these plants that we consider weeds? So there's different control methods. The most common method may be mechanical. So this can include hand weeding, hoeing, tillage, mowing, or flame weeders. Going a little more in depth into mechanical weed control, often it's very labor intensive, so it requires we as humans to go out there and pull weeds, run the tiller. Whether your weed control is excessive and you need to mow those weeds off, it requires a lot of work. It's best to control weeds when plants are small. It's typically suggested for like herbicide control to spray weeds less than 6 inches tall, as this is when it's easiest to kill those weeds. It's easiest too to get the root system when you're killing weeds at the 6-inch tall phase. It can also be difficult to get the root system if you're using mechanical weed control. So I think about dandelions. Oftentimes I'll have to use like a landscape knife to get deep into the soil to get most of the root of the dandelion. And this can be an issue with other species as well. Mechanical weed control works well only on growing weeds, and it must be repeated. So we have a bank of seeds in the soil, and so throughout the season, those seeds will germinate based off an optimal environment. And so it requires frequent visits to your garden or your landscape to see and maintain what weeds are currently growing. Hoeing and tilling will also bring new weed seeds to the soil surface. So like I had mentioned, when we have that seed bank full of seeds, and so when we bring new soil to the soil surface, it's bringing new seeds to the soil surface as well, which can create more issues further on down the road. Mechanical weed control is a season-long effort, so it's something that must be maintained all season, otherwise those weeds can mature and will produce seed. A great example of this is henbit. So Henbit is a winter annual weed that shows up early in the spring. Oftentimes, we don't necessarily notice it as much until it starts flowering. Typically, with the weed cycle or a growing cycle, we would expect it to flower and then we would expect it to set seed. But I was always taught with henbit, pretty much whenever you see the purple flowers, um, you can expect that it's already set seed, which is going to create seed and weed issues for the next growing season. It's also possible that with mechanical weed control, you can cause damage to the plants that you're growing. So in your garden, if you get too close to the roots while you're tilling or hoeing, it is possible that you can damage the plants, which can further lead to death of the plants. And then it can also be dangerous, especially with something like a flame weeder. So you're mixing propane and fire, and oftentimes those two don't match or go well together, as you can get an even bigger fire. I also think about with walk behind tillers, oftentimes your feet and your shins are close to the moving parts of the tiller. My mom and sister are both nurses, and they've experienced people coming into the emergency room with damage due to walk behind tillers. Some other control methods include biological control. Often in pastures, farmers will use goats to graze weeds that are less desirable to the grazing animals, such as cattle. I don't think this would probably be the most beneficial thing to use in our landscape and gardens, as I don't think that goats would just stop with the weeds. They'd probably enjoy the rest of the garden as well. There's some more natural predators as well, such as weed seed predators. An example of this are ground beetles. These would be beneficial as uh, they feed on the weed seeds in the soil. But again, often if we are starting our garden from seed, the ground beetles don't necessarily distinguish between a weed seed and a vegetable seed, so they might be feeding on our vegetables as well. Another method is chemical control. This consists of herbicides. Herbicides can be very effective, but if used incorrectly, they can also be detrimental to your landscape. So some herbicides are non-selective, meaning that it will kill everything if sprayed. Um, this is beneficial if you want to kill everything, but in a garden setting where we have diverse plants as well as crops, it's probably not what we want for our end goal. There's also selective herbicides available. However, in a lot of our gardens, we have a mixture of broadleaf and grass species. And so that makes it more difficult to spray, as we would need to either spray around the species or we would need to change out the herbicide that we're using. If herbicides are your preferred method, it's something that you can plan for, so you can locate all of your grass species in one area of your garden and all of your broadleaf species in another area, and then you can spray based off of what's located in that area. Another thing to be mindful of is herbicide activity in the soil. So herbicides do remain active in the soil for a certain period of time. So that's something to think of when rotating crops. It's also important to think of if you're starting out your season with either spinach or lettuce, and then you're going to plant a later planting of sweet corn. Your your spinach and lettuce are broadleaf species, whereas your sweet corn is a grass species. So if you sprayed something on your spinach and lettuce that's going to kill grasses, um, you're probably not going to get an establishment of sweet corn in that same area later in the season. When using chemical weed control, it's always important to follow the label. The label is a legal document, so if you aren't following the label, you could possibly get in trouble. It just requires that you get caught. But I would always suggest following it for your PPE, especially for your rates. A lot of people complain about not seeing the same kind of control year after year. Sometimes when we use lower rates than what's suggested, that can lead to resistance over time. And sometimes we have the mindset too that if I increase this rate, well, it'll kill them more effectively. And sometimes that's not always true, which can lead to damage to the plants that you're not wanting to kill. It's always very important to rinse equipment to prevent carryover. It's suggested to always do a triple rinse of your equipment. However, typically when I transition from spraying our driveway to spraying our yard, I like to do maybe a fourth or fifth rinse just because it makes me a little nervous using glyphosate or a soil sterilant to spray our driveway versus that can totally kill our yard. So that's not something that I want to do. It's also important to calibrate your spray equipment to apply the correct rate. Again, it goes back to the label issue. You should always make sure you're applying the correct rate to properly control any issues. And then it's always good to check the weather. If you spray and then it rains probably within an hour or two after spraying, it just depends on the rain fastness of your herbicide. It's possible that the rain can wash that herbicide off the plants and potentially even run off into the yard or into an area where you have plants planted that you don't hope to kill. So our last control measure is cultural weed control. This can be done through stale seedbed, varied drip irrigation, crop rotation, varying your row spacing, and then coverings or mulches. So cultural weed control emphasizes prevention. So how can we prevent weeds from germinating? How can we prevent them from emerging? One method of doing this is solarization. So this is the use of clear polyethylene plastic to capture energy from the sun to raise the soil temperature to levels lethal to weed seeds. This is typically carried out between or during the summer, anytime between May to August, and it should be done 4 to 5 weeks to be effective. Typically when this is done, soil temperature can reach a temperature between 120 to 125 degrees Fahrenheit. And what it does is it kills seeds in the upper 1 to 2 inches of soil. If you think about our year this year, so if in the month of May, we've probably had mostly temperatures in 60 degrees Fahrenheit. This last week, we've probably reached a few days in the 80s. But overall, it probably hasn't been warm enough to get the soil temperature warm to 120 to 125 degrees Fahrenheit. Most of us have our gardens planted already, and so if we were to use this method of controlling weeds, it would probably delay us to keep us from we would end up planting our gardens later into June. And then once you solarize your soil, you should only shallowly till your gardens, as if, again, you till any deeper, you're going to be bringing up weed seeds from those deeper portions of the soil. In addition to solarization, you can vary your row spacing. So narrowing your rows helps with soil coverage. It helps to close your canopy sooner, and so that way it provides competition for any weed species below the plant canopy. You can also widen your rows to make it easier for you to use mechanical control such as tillage or hoeing. Stale seedbed is somewhat similar to solarization in that you till the soil prior to planting and allow the seeds to germinate. And then once all the seeds have germinated, you can either use a shallow tillage or a non-selective herbicide to kill any germinated weeds. But again, using tillage, you can introduce new weed seeds, or with the herbicide, there's also the issue that you may not have anything grow or germinate in that area after using the herbicide. And then finally, with cultural weed control, we have mulches, and that's any layer of material spread over the soil surface. So this is where we'll go ahead and get started about discussing different types of mulches and what the benefits are of each of the mulches. So overall, the benefits of using mulch, it's great for weed control. It prevents and slows weed seed germination. It's also great for soil insulation. So when we have varying temperatures, such as temperatures in the 50s and back into the 80s within a week, it's nice because it helps regulate the soil temperature. It also benefits us in that it helps with soil moisture retention, especially for dry times or dry areas. It reduces evaporation at the surface of soil. It reduces erosion. So when we get heavy rains, oftentimes we can see soil being removed from fields or uncovered soil areas. And so mulch can help to reduce that soil runoff. It also helps with disease reduction. So it prevents splashing of fungal or bacterial inoculums from soil. It's not saying that we won't see any disease. We'll probably still will, because that fungal and bacteria can still rest on mulch as well as other mediums as well. But we would hope that it would maybe reduce that disease. It also provides soil tilth. So with our organic mulches such as straw or grass clippings or bark mulch, over time it breaks down and it can add organic matter to the soil. It can reduce soil heaving. So during the winter, we often experience freezing and thawing, which can cause soil heaving. By applying mulch, it provides that um, that barrier or that protection, and so it lessens tension between water molecules in the subsurface. It can also help to reduce soil compaction. It absorbs pressure from any traffic that travels over the mulch, which I would hope you're probably not driving or moving anything too heavy through your garden or through your landscape. But if that's the case, then it does help relieve some of that compaction. It also improves the appearance of your landscape. You can add color, you can add rock to benefit the appearance overall of your home and landscape. And then it also helps to protect plants. So something that I enjoy doing, or that I've started doing, is I typically will apply mulch around trees and some plants that we often mow around. When we mow or weed eat around trees and plants, oftentimes we can nick the bark, and over time that can lead to disease. And so it's always beneficial to put mulch around those plants to help to protect them. So some of our options with mulch, our most used option is organic mulch, which consists of wood chips, straw, pine needles, leaves, lawn clippings, peat or sphagnum moss, newspaper, rice hulls, walnut shells, peanut hulls, or cocoa bean shells. These typically work well for cool season crops, as it provides nice insulation. They don't typically get too hot, which really helps out with the cooler season crops. First, we'll look at bark as an organic mulch. Some advantages of bark is it's slow to decompose, it is attractive, and it is reusable. Not reusable in a sense that you can take it up and put it somewhere else, but it does last from year to year. Some disadvantages of bark mulch is it may hinder water penetration, and typically after a year, the color does typically fade. So It lasts typically 1 to 2 years, and again, it can vary in bark size and color. If you look below at the pictures, there's a pine bark nugget, which is larger in size, whereas the shredded pine bark mulch or the aged pine bark fines are a lot smaller in size. These two will probably decompose quicker because they are finer shavings, and they probably aren't going to last as long. Like I said, you can get them in multiple colors. Oftentimes, at Home Depot or Lowe's or your local nursery, they'll have like red, browns, blacks, just dependent on whatever your personal preference is. And that typically only lasts a year. Sometimes you can like rake the mulch around and the color will be different on the undersides of the mulch. Um, and then when mulching around plants, it's always suggested to mulch about 3 inches deep. Another option is pine needles. Some advantages of this is it's slow to decompose. They are slightly acidic and they do suppress weeds. They are free of weed seeds and it does not pack down. And again, it is reusable. One disadvantage of pine needles is it does require gloves to handle. I don't know if you've ever worked with pine needles before, but they're often sticky and they're often a little spiky, and so they can hurt your hands. And then also they are flammable when dry. So if you do live in a dry environment, it's maybe something that you wouldn't want to try. Typically, pine needles will last 2 to 3 years. With the acidity that they can provide or become as they break down, they are great options for mulches around rhododendrons, blueberries, and other plants that require a more acidic soil. Another option is straw. So this is typically what I use in our vegetable garden. We have easy access to it as we have livestock. So we typically use straw, or we typically bale straw each year. Some advantages of straw is it works as a good insulator. So I planted some spinach a couple weeks ago, and with the warmer temperatures that we've been experiencing lately, they haven't been growing very well. So this past weekend, we mulched around them with straw, and it's provided a nice insulation for the spinach plants, and they've really seemed to perk up. It's also very lightweight, readily available. Oftentimes in the fall, you might find this available at a lot of different stores, as it's often used in fall decorations. It's also useful when used around vegetables and as a cover for seeded lawns. Again, it provides insulation, and so it's very useful when seeding. Some disadvantages to straw is it's generally not attractive. It is also flammable, especially if dry, and it may deplete nitrogen from your soil. So if you're using straw around like your corn plants or any other nitrogen living plants, it may be advisable to add some supplemental nitrogen to those plants. And it typically only lasts 1 year or one growing season. We also have grass clippings. This is a common one that's used in your gardens as well, more so your vegetable gardens. It does quickly decompose. It's best when layered thinly, and it's readily available for everyone that has a lawn. It's best to compost grass clippings or let them age a bit before using. Some disadvantages of grass clippings are they do deplete nitrogen at the soil surface. If applied too thickly, they can become dry and a barrier to water. I don't know if you've ever mowed your yard wet, but typically afterwards, the grass or the lawn clippings are easily compactable, and so that can be an issue too when using it on your garden. They can carry weed seeds, so if you have a very weedy yard, it is possible that those weed seeds will be transferred to your garden and can cause issues there. And then also, if you spray your yard, It's not advisable that you would use those grass clippings as a mulch in your garden, as the herbicides can still be with the grass clippings and can kill plants in your garden. And typically grass clippings last about 1 season. So then we have leaves. Some advantages of leaves include that they are a good insulator. They're easy to transport. And again, if you have a lawn, if you have trees in your yard, they're readily available. It's best to use them shredded. So one thing that we like to do in the fall is we have a little push mower, and it has a bagger on it, so we can just run over a small area of our yard and collect the leaves. It mulches them as it collect it, and then we can bag them in different bags and keep them over the fall to use the next spring. They do contain trace minerals, which is always beneficial for plants. They will work into the soil to supply good organic matter. Some disadvantages of leaves is they can become soggy and pack down, restricting water flow. And again, leaves only last one growing season. We also have newspaper as an organic mulch. Some advantages of newspaper is it works as a good barrier to weed seed germination. It's important to keep the newspaper wet or cover with bark or other mulch. Newspaper is pretty light, so it will blow away if you don't cover it with something else. And it's best used between vegetable rows, and it's typically pretty accessible. Um, Newspaper is one that we commonly use in our yard, so we have never used it in the vegetable garden. I did lay some out under the straw this year, just in areas where we had excessive weeds, but it is something that we commonly use in our ornamental landscaping. What we typically do is we'll get a bunch of newspapers and put them in the wheelbarrow, and then add water to the wheelbarrow, and then lay the newspapers down wet. It's typically best to do it decently thick, but not too thick that you're going to impede water movement. And then once you get your newspapers laid out, you can lay mulch on top of it to keep the newspapers in place. I think they last, here it says 1 season. I probably would say in your landscaping it lasts a little bit longer. I think we're going on maybe year 3 of the newspapers that we used or that we put out and put mulch over, and they're still in good shape. I think it just really depends on how well you cover it with mulch and how well you keep them covered. Some disadvantages of newspaper: it's colored newsprint that can contain lead. So if you're using newspapers, it's probably a good idea to contact your newspaper printing service and see what exactly is in the lead. They can blow away if not covered, and if you leave them uncovered or if they become uncovered, they can be unsightly in the landscape setting. Now, if you do prefer rock as a mulch, I wouldn't suggest that you use newspaper under the rock, as the rock's a bit more abrasive and can tear through the newspaper. Some other organic options are cocoa bean hulls. As you could guess, this would be attractive and fragrant. They do contain about 2% nitrogen. However, they can be difficult to obtain and they are fairly expensive. They do have an average lifespan of 1 to 2 years. As well as nutshells, they're slow to decompose, attractive, and they can add nutrients to the soil. They do have sharp edges that can be difficult to work with, so again, you'll need those gloves to help protect your hands. And they may not always be readily available, and if you can find them, they might be more expensive. And your nutshells, again, have a 1 to 2 year lifespan. In addition to organic mulches, we also had synthetic mulches. So this can be landscape fabric, plastic films, carpet pieces. I kind of thought that one was a little bit on the different side, but that was one that I found from the Missouri Botanical Gardens. We also have rubber mulches and then heavy duty aluminum foil, which was another one that was kind of questionable from the Botanical Gardens. So with synthetic mulches, they tend to magnify and trap heat. A lot of times, like our landscape fabrics and our plastic films are black. And as you probably know, black attracts heat, which can cause some issues with that. They are beneficial for early season plantings. So with that heat magnification, it does warm the soil quicker, which would allow for earlier season plantings. And then they are useful on our warm season crops that like that warmth. And those crops are tomato, pepper, squash, eggplant, and a couple others. So we'll look at clear and black plastic. Some advantages of these are they retain soil moisture. The black provides effective weed control, as there's not going to be any light penetrating through the plastic, and I wouldn't expect any weeds to be able to penetrate the plastic either. They may grow over to the holes that you create in the plastic, but again, it would take some pretty big weeds. It does warm the soil quickly in the spring. It's very easy to find black plastic. Often you can find it online, or you might even be able to find it at your local nursery or box store. This works well for vegetables, but it can also be used around landscape plantings. If you're doing more perennial plantings, I may not use it so much for that, as oftentimes with the plastic, it's more difficult for water and organic material to make it to the roots of the plants. So that's not necessarily ideal. Some disadvantages is it's non-permeable to air and water. It can suffocate shallow-rooted plants. It's non-degradable, so oftentimes you'll have to go collect it after a season, or if you leave it out there over the winter, it can be damaged. So it's something that you would need to clean up. Weeds grow under clear plastic, so through the clear plastic, you're still able to get sunlight, which would allow for the plants to photosynthesize and grow. It adds no nutrients. It should be covered with other mulch materials to prevent UV damage. So this would be something that would be done if you're using it in your ornamental setting. If you're using it in vegetable production, that's not necessarily something that you'd have to do. And depending on how you use it, it can typically last 1 to 2 years. So here are some examples of black and clear plastic. On the left-hand side, we see black plastic being used for vegetable production. Underneath the black plastic, you can still see that we have some weeds germinate. However, they're not growing very well. They're very chlorotic, and it doesn't look like they're photosynthesizing, so I wouldn't expect that they would survive. And then under the white plastic, it looks like the plants are growing pretty well. And so once you puncture holes in that to grow your plants, those weeds could grow up through those holes. We also have porous plastic available. Some advantages of that is it's the same as other plastic. It does allow water and air movement through the barrier, so that's a benefit over just your regular black and white plastic. Some disadvantages of porous plastic is it does degrade with exposure to the sun. So because of the air and water movement, maybe this is something you could use more for your landscaping. And so it should be used, or it should be top mulch to help protect the plastic. And again, depending on how you use it, the duration for this is 1 to 2 years. Next, we have landscape fabric. This is probably one that people are more familiar with. Advantages of landscape fabric are it allows water and air to move. It's durable, which again, it depends on the thickness of the landscape fabric. It does suppress most weeds. It's good for landscape and perennial beds. Some disadvantages of landscape fabric is that weeds can get started in the fabric, and once they do get started, it's very difficult to pull the weeds out of the fabric. And then it should definitely be covered by a top mulch, as oftentimes the landscape fabric isn't the most attractive. The duration can be 1 to 20 years. It really depends on the quality of the fabric that you get. And my one suggestion to you would be don't skimp on the quality of the fabric. So I have used landscape fabric in the past, and I haven't had great success with it. On the left, you can see spun fabric. It feels more like a cloth. Depending on the thickness, it can be pretty ineffective. There's one thickness that is very thin. You can see through it, and it takes no time for the weeds to grow through it. It's very inexpensive, which is beneficial to the grower, but it's probably only going to last you 1 year. So I would say to stay away from that. Then we also have woven fabric. It looks more like a tarp material. I've never used this before, but going forward with future landscaping, I think it is something that I would like to try. I often see it under like a rock landscape, so I would think that it would be a little heavy duty and be able to hold up to weeds. So both of these come in different thicknesses, and they're typically displayed as ounces. I found anywhere from like a 1 to 5 ounce thickness, and based off the ounces or the thickness, I would base it on how effective it's going to be at controlling your weeds. There's also different year guarantees with each of the thicknesses. Typically, those go 5 years to possibly 20 years. Another option for synthetic mulch is rubber mulch. So I remember when rubber mulch first came out, it was pretty hyped up, but I think over the last few years, it's not quite as hyped up as what people originally thought it was going to be. Some advantages of rubber mulch is it does promote recycling. It's available in many color options. So if you wanted blue or purple mulch, rubber mulch is the way to go, as you do have that option with it. It's said to be less maintenance, but I think it's pretty much the same maintenance as anything else. And then it warms the soil earlier in the spring. So it's ground up rubber tires, and as you would expect, rubber gets warm when exposed to the sun, so that's something that we would expect to see with rubber mulch as well. Some disadvantages of rubber mulch is when it's heated up, it does smell of hot tires, which isn't the most desirable smell. When they break down, it releases heavy metals and toxic chemicals as it breaks down. As you know, tires are flammable, so we would expect rubber mulch to be as well. And it is fairly expensive for what it is. The estimated duration is approximately 10 years, but I think that can vary as well. And then lastly, we have inorganic mulch. So that consists of stones, gravel, and other rock material. Often it's applied in areas where more durable mulch is needed. So I often use rocks in places such as under hydrants, where water can still easily move through the rock layer. As you can see in this picture here, they've kind of mixed like a smaller rock with a larger rock, and that larger rock is beneficial as it's probably going to help to keep that smaller rock in place, which is very strategic. It works great for permanent landscapes such as woody planting beds. So your woody species are more permanent, and rock is more permanent as well. So that's ideal to put around the woody species. It does come in various colors, sizes, and shapes, and you can mix the different sizes, colors, and shapes to vary your landscaping. Some advantages of rock and gravel: it allows water to penetrate. It is long lasting, a more permanent mulch, and it is attractive. Some disadvantages: it does not always control weeds. So with those bigger pore spaces between rocks, it does allow weeds to come through. It is non-absorbent and it adds no organic matter to the soil. It can become hot and affect root system of shallow rooted plants. Also, you cannot cultivate soil where there's rock. Otherwise, you're probably going to be mixing your rock and your soil, and that creates an issue with future weeds. It's difficult to plant into post-application, so I don't know if you've ever tried to move rock around. It takes a little bit of extra work as rock is a little heavier, and it's also difficult to remove. So once you have it in, uh, I mean, it's not the best to remove. It takes some time, especially if you don't want to take a lot of soil with it. And the duration, it's pretty permanent. So in conclusion of all of our mulch options, there isn't really one mulch that stands above others. I think it's really dependent on your personal preferences as well as availability of materials and functionality for your needs. There's no guarantee either that you won't still have weeds in your landscape with the addition of your mulching options. However, I do think that with the addition of mulch to your landscape, it can cut down on the amount of weeds, which can make your life a bit easier. So if you'd like, this presentation is available on our box at the U of I, and so you can see the presentation as well as some resources that I used for this presentation. And then it's always beneficial to us if you evaluate our presentations to let us know what we can do better, if there's different topics that you'd like to hear about for future presentations. So you can visit the the web address at the top, or if you have your cell phone, you can go to pictures and take a picture of the QR code, and it will take you to the email address. Or sorry, not the email address, the website. And then also, this is the Good Growing webinar series. So we also have a blog as well as a podcast. So if you're interested in either of those, we write weekly blog posts, and then we also do a podcast each week, and we try to touch on topics that will be useful to our home growers, so that way they can use it to benefit them at in their hobbies and practices that they're doing at home. So again, you can either visit the websites, or if you take out your phone, you can take a picture and it will take you to the website. And then lastly, here's my information. If you guys ever have any questions, feel free to contact me and I can get back to you and help you with those questions and any issues you might have.